Okay, I'll start roll call now. Crawford,
Present.
Nicole,
Can't get off mute. Present.
Lila,
Present.
Ozzy,
Present.
Lanita,
Present.
Scott,
Present.
and Terry.
Present.
Okay, so 2, 3, 4.
Nakenya.
Oh, Nakenya, I'm sorry, Nakenya.
Present. Okay.
We have quorum.
And how many do we have?
We have, I was trying to count.
Okay.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7.
I've got 8 or is it-
8. Okay,
Oh.
probably 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You're correct. There are 8 board members present.
All right, then we will begin. Well, first of all, good morning and welcome. We are the Community Advisory Board. We're known as CAB. We are a board established by the Community Corrections Partnership, known as CCP. Let's set the table for board members and for those of you in the audience with some housekeeping items. For those of you in the public, please keep your participation on mute until called upon by either raising your hand or for those who are unable to raise their hand, just kind of chime in after the board members have made their comments. For those of you on the phone, use *6 to mute and *6 to unmute. We'll hear comments first from board members and then from the public by raising your hand. Let's pause a moment and review our purpose, which is to advise CCP by assessing implementation of the County Reentry Strategic Plan. Some, but not all of our responsibilities are advising CCP on engagement strategies, advising county agencies regarding programs for implementation in the county, and encouraging outcomes that are consistent with the county's reentry strategic plan. Now let's move to today's agenda, and we'll move in this sequence. Board members first, staff, and then members of the public, if you would kindly introduce yourself using chat. Now let's start with board members, if you could introduce yourself. I'll
Would you
start
like-
then. Oh, go ahead, please, Monique.
No, would you like me to call each
Yeah.
person?
Would you please?
Okay, all right, just 1 second, please. Okay, Crawford,
Good morning, I'm Crawford Carpenter, member of chair in my second year.
Nicole Green,
Hi, my name is Nicole. I am the vice chair. I'm a member of CAB, and this is my second year.
Lila Blanchard,
Good morning, everyone. I am Lila Blanchard, and I am in my 3rd year of the CAB board, and thank y'all for being here.
okay, Scott Parsons,
Hello, that's my name. Yes, Scott Parsons, resident of Moraga, and I'm chair of the OCEC, which is the Outreach and Community Engagement Committee.
Lanita Mims,
Hi, I'm Lanita, in my first year, and I am a member, a commissioner on CAB and a member of OCEC.
okay, and Ozzy Carter,
Good morning, everyone. Ozzy Carter, my second year on CAB. I'm a justice impacted African-American great grandmother now, and so glad to be of service, and welcome to our meeting.
okay, Terry Dunn,
Good morning, Perry Dunn, CAB member and member of the Programs and Services Committee.
Nakenya Allen,
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nakenya Allen. I'm located in Martinez, and I've been a member for about 2 years.
Okay, and Reverend Julius Van Hook.
Hi, Reverend Julius Van Hook. This is my first year.
Okay, I don't think I missed anyone, so each board member has introduced themselves.
Okay, could we go to any staff members or representatives of any of our supervisors? Would you
Okay.
introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, so Patrice Guillory. Okay, she'll probably be here in a second. I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Monique Tate. I'm with the Office of Reentry and Justice as a program coordinator and staff to CAP. Elisa Robinson.
Good morning, Elisa Robinson with the Office of Supervisor Diane Burgess. I saw in the chat that Patrice said she had to step away for a second, so.
Oh,
Be right
thank you
back.
so much. Okay, and Jill Ray.
Hi there, Jill Ray, Office of Supervisor Candace Anderson.
Okay, and Patrice is our director of ORJ, so she will likely be helping talking during the meeting. So, okay, so all staff have been identified properly.
Okay, thank you. And again, for those that are also as members of the public, kindly introduce yourselves in chat if you desire to do so. Now let's move to general announcements. Are there any general announcements that you would like to make? Board members first, followed by members of the public. Yes, Lila.
Hello, I wouldn't want to let down a wonderful tradition at the end of the year. I just want to invite everyone on this call to share and to come to our Stepping Stones for Rubicon programs. It will be happening for us next Friday. So I'll go ahead and put the Zoom link. It's a hybrid celebration, but at this time, partners are calling in remotely for us. So I'll put that information in the chat, and that is a celebration of Rubicon's programs that are funded by AB 109, as well as parenting programs at our Richmond, Concord, and Antioch locations. So thank you for coming to that. If you're able to come and just dropping in and checking that out. And then I'll also put in the chat our link for positions that are opening. We are conducting interviews for the Richmond location where I work and participate for a financial coach, which is a very unique set of skills and interests. So we are looking for a financial coach who's very passionate about working with folks re-entering the community after incarceration, as well as family, as well as guardians and parents who are all working to break the cycle of poverty. So thank you all for your time.
And thank you, Lila. Next up, Lanita. Good morning, Lanita.
Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to say hello and welcome everybody here to this setting. My announcement for the day is tomorrow, the food bank Contra Costa will be in the Veterans Parade in Fairfield. So if any of you are available, parade starts at 12:30 and I'll be walking and waving.
Thank you, Lanita. Lila, your hand is still up. Do you have another announcement for us?
Hopefully that it wasn't quick enough lowering it. I was putting information in the chat. Nope, I'm good. Thank you, Crawford.
Okay.
Did Elisa have her hand up by any chance?
No, I didn't have my hand up,
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
but thanks for
Okay.
checking. It's all right.
Uh-huh.
All right. Before we move on, let's double check. I don't see any other hands on my screen. Do you, Monique?
No, I don't.
All right, let's move to the next item on the agenda. And
Good
the
morning,
next
Crawford.
Pardon?
Tiffany.
morning.
Oh, yes, Tiffany.
Excuse me for the interruption. I'm not sure why my hand capabilities are not working.
Oh,
Good
okay.
morning, everyone. I hope y'all are having a great start. I would just like to share that the Reentry Success Center is currently recruiting for our upcoming Alpha cohort, and it is currently scheduled to begin this coming Monday, November 14th. So if you know any community members who could benefit from the program, please refer them to us so we can get them assessed and connected to the program and ready to participate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tiffany. Let's move then. Is there public comment on any item under the jurisdiction of the Community Advisory Board and not on our current agenda? I don't hear any public comment. Would you double check? I don't see it on my screen, Monique. We don't want to.
I don't see any
Okay.
hands either.
Okay, fine then. Since there is no public comment, let's move to the next item on our agenda, which is item number 3. And that will be the approval of records of actions from our October 13th meeting. Please refer to attachment 1, pages 4 through 7. I will assume that each board member has had the opportunity to review this information. However, we will give you approximately 30 seconds, or if you can scroll through it quickly, Monique, because we need to get to several things on our agenda.
Oh, hold on 1 second. I'm going to stop sharing. I need to put up another screen,
Okay.
the actual agenda. So just 1 second, please.
Thank you so much.
Stop share. Okay, can you see on my screen? The agenda?
Yes.
Okay, so let me go to page 4.
Okay, why don't we proceed? Is there a motion for approval?
This is Nicole. I motion to approve.
Is there a second?
This is Ozzy Carter. I second that.
Discussion? Discussion from the public? Please call the vote.
Okay, Crawford Carpenter,
Aye.
Nicole Green,
Aye.
Lila Blanchard,
Aye.
Lenita Mims,
Aye.
Ozzy Carter,
Aye.
Scott Parsons,
Aye.
Terry Dunn,
Terry, you're on mute.
Aye.
Okay, thanks.
and Nikinya Allen.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Let's move to the next item on the agenda. Could you scroll up to agenda item number 4, please, if you would, Monique? Thank you. Agenda item 4 is an area that we like to address as quickly as possible, and that's when we have vacancies. This particular item is to fill 2 vacancies, and I would like to recommend that Reverend Van Hook and Joel Nickerson Shanks be appointed as voting members for CAB. They are currently alternate members and have both been active in the process of CAB. May I have a motion?
Sure, I'll be happy to make that motion if I could. I move that Reverend Julius Van Hook and Joel Nickerson Shanks are both moved from the alternate role to full voting member of the Community Advisory Board.
Is there a second?
This is Nicole. I second it.
Discussion by the board?
My question is just if Joel Nicholson Shanks is aware that this vote is happening today since he's not on the call.
Monique, has Joel been contacted?
Well, he is aware, he received
Okay.
the agenda, and also he was vetted in the OCEC meeting.
Excellent then.
Got it, thank you.
Is there any discussion from the public? None being heard from the board or the public, would you please call the vote?
Okay, Crawford Carpenter,
Yes?
Nicole Green,
Aye.
Lila Blanchard,
Aye.
Scott Parsons,
Aye.
Terry Dunn,
Aye.
Lenita Mims,
Yeah.
Ozzie Carter,
Aye.
Nikenya Allen.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much, Monique. Would you be kind enough to move to, oh, there it is on the screen, item number 5. Item number 5 here is to discuss our CAB membership applications to fill future vacancies. We have with us LaTanya Thompson, Rena Moore, Brenda Lee, and Justin Van Zerber. These are the 4 individuals who we will be considering today. Let me make a brief comment. Each of these applicants have been reviewed by OCEC and passed their particular reviewing process. They are presented to the board as capable, enthusiastic individuals. Will each of the candidates share a little bit about your background and desire to be involved with CAB, starting with LaTanya, followed by Rena, followed by Brenda, and ending with Justin. We are looking for your 2 to 3 minute elevator speech. So let the show begin. LaTanya, you're up.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm interested in being part of the CAB because of my passion for mental health. I'm interested in providing the service needed for the people who are re-entering into the program, making sure that they have the resources and support so that we reduce or eliminate their chances of actually going back to jail. I'm also interested in the homeless portion of it to see how many have been displaced as a result of not having the support they need for their mental illness. As a resident of the community, I am looking to be involved, to roll up my sleeves, and to play an active role in the success of our community by not just complaining about what I see, but actually taking a role and fixing what others may not see or willing to do the work in. So thank you for the opportunity.
LaTanya, geez, I'd like to be on the elevator with you. That was good, short and sweet. Thank you. Okay, let's move to the next applicant, Rena Moore. Good morning, Rena.
Good morning. So my name is Rena Moore. As a formerly incarcerated individual and as someone who works with and advocates for formerly incarcerated individuals every day through my work with Rubicon programs and the Safe Return Project, I feel that I would make a good fit in CAB. I know how it is to be formerly incarcerated, trying to stay on the right path and succeed and not go back to jail, and it's extremely difficult. It could sometimes feel like all odds are against you. So I feel that based on my work in the community and the advocacy work that I do also with, I do homeless advocacy work as well. So I'm constantly around formerly incarcerated people, and it's, like I said, based on my own experience, it's really hard to succeed in everything like that. So I want to be that voice to help people in my former situation.
Rena, thank you. And let me point out that Rena, you had visited and chimed in on, I think, one or two of our other standing committees. We thank you for that particular attendance. So thank you. And we're moving along. Thank you. By chance, is Brenda Lee with us? I didn't see.
No, she isn't, Crawford. I'm sorry. I meant to tell you that she had an engagement. She's out of town.
Yes, understand.
Okay.
Okay, that means we got to wrap this up with you, Justin. You're on.
Great. Thank you, Crawford. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the time and thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning. My name is Justin Van Zerber. I moved to El Cerrito about 2.5 years ago with my wife, and really excited to utilize my skills to give back to the Contra Costa community. In my current role, I work at an organization called supplybank.org, which is providing essential supplies to vulnerable populations across the state. We integrate into the safety net, prioritizing the most impacted communities, utilizing data to make those decisions. Before that, and why I'm here today, I spent 4.5 years working in East Oakland at the Youth Employment Partnership, working on a grassroots program to support reentry youth and young adults, access job skill development, as well as educational opportunities. During that time, I really was opened my eyes to the inequities that we see every single day for these populations. And as I've strengthened my skill base and continue to grow in these variety of roles, I really keep being drawn back to trying to address some of these inequities. And I want to take this opportunity to use some of my extra time to sit with all of you, to have dialogue, to raise the voice of these individuals, and to ensure that the programs that they have access to continue to be better. So again, I thank you for the time, and I'm excited to continue to learn and grow with all of you.
Justin, thank you very much. Boy, you know what? You're talking about the 3 applicants. You said it, you meant it, and let's move forward. Okay, let's now move to the board. Are there any board members that would have questions of any of these applicants? And maybe we should do it this way, that it would make it easier on the board members. Let's start with LaTanya. Are there any other questions for LaTanya from the board?
Well, for all 3, just how soon can you start? Very, very impressive, and glad you're here.
Okay, Terry.
I had a quick question for LaTanya. I was curious, LaTanya, and so grateful for the mental health focus and concentration and experience that you lifted up in your application. So thank you for that. I was just curious if you had any areas that are close to your heart within mental health, or within AB 109 services that you want to speak to. And I know that's kind of a hard question on your first day when you're just applying and still not official, but if you have any additional information you want to share with us about supporting folks in mental health, I'd love to hear it.
Okay, so I didn't mention that I recently became a mental health advocate. My heart and compassion for it is that people don't actually slow down to listen to their bodies. They don't know what resources are out there. A lot of us are burnt out, tired, and we diagnose it as that's just who they are. My hope is that they get the help that they need. They know the resources, because when you're not mentally healthy, it impacts every area of your life. I also want to be proactive and talk a lot about mental health, which is more about self-care, so that before we're actually diagnosed and get to a place where we have to be medicated, that we know how to slow down, listen to our bodies, and give it what it needs before it's too late. and also just making aware of what resources are out there. So whether it be a job with EAP and other resources in the community, that people are aware of it and that they know, which therapists will do it on a sliding scale and which will accept insurance and which insurance policies they accept.
Thank you so much, Latanya. That is really exciting. And we have focused during this year on mental health and housing. So I know that your insights and passion for advocacy and folks connecting with resources will help. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Are there any questions from the public at large? None being heard, let's move to the next candidate. Rena Moore, are there any questions from the board for Rena?
This is Lanita. I do have one question. Rena, you mentioned in your 3-minute elevator pitch that you were finding it difficult, or people find it difficult staying here in the social part of it, and not going back to jail. And I would like to ask, what is the most difficult thing that you find?
Finding employment and housing are the two main ones.
Okay.
Because a lot of people have family members and stuff that live in like low-income housing and stuff like that. And if you're a felon, you can't move in back home with your family. I faced homelessness because of that. I was homeless for a few years because of that, not being able to get a job. No one wants to hire a felon. So those are the two main difficulties I faced. And I've seen other people face too.
Thank you. I'm sure that as you learn more about us, you'll understand that I'm all about reentry and trying to help keep people home. So that's why I asked.
No problem. That's why I'm trying to do homeless advocacy now, and I work with Rubicon and with the Safe Return Project, because I want to help people who are in my situation, because to navigate their programs and all kinds of stuff like that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Nicole. I don't have a question, Crawford, but I just want to say I'm very excited that you would like to join CAB. I love to hear from individuals that actually have been through it. I'm also been in your shoes as well. So it's very nice to be able to get the perspective on what you've dealt with and those barriers, so that we can, definitely try to make this change happen for individuals. So very happy to actually have you both. Very passionate about mental health as well. So I'm kind of like the rest of the team. When can you guys start? So no questions, but excited.
Oh, thank you so much, Nicole, and thank you, Rena. Oh, I'm sorry. Any questions from the public at large for Rena Moore? None being heard, let's move to the third applicant, Justin Van Zerber. Are there any questions from the board for Justin?
I don't have, I don't have any questions. And forgive me, Justin, if I didn't jot this down correctly as I was trying to take notes. You had mentioned that you also do some work in the East Bay. Can you repeat that again?
So I live in El Cerrito.
Okay.
I work out of Oakland, but our organization has a statewide reach. I think what you might be referring to is my time at the Youth Employment Partnership was in East Oakland. So off of East 14th and 24th. And that was 4.5 years, predominantly with reentry populations.
Okay. Yeah, it caught my attention because of the youth. I outside of here, I work inside of the jails, and I know it's one of the things that we talk about on here as well is that population, the TAPE population, or just, helping individuals that are turning into adults that may be going through the criminal system and things like that. So it just sparked my attention. Very happy to have you here. I don't have any questions, but just really excited. So thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you there, Justin. Any other comments, questions, etc., from members of the board?
Hi, it's Lanita again. I have a question. Have you done any work with Contra Costa County?
I have not, no. So in my current role, we are integrated in all 58 counties, but it's not really focused on a sole population. It's more of the general vulnerable populations. But I'm excited. I mean, I think my wife and I moved to Contra Costa just a couple of years ago, and I want to give back to where I live. I think that you can always contribute and build structure in impacted areas, but I also think that you need to bring those skills back home. And so excited to explore that now.
Okay, thank you.
It's I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
No, it's okay. No, what I was going to say was not cab related. Someone asked me about lunch, and I was going to say chicken. It's
Oh, my goodness. Okay. Well, any other questions? Excuse me here. Any other questions?
Looks
from-
like Scott has his hand up.
Oh, Scott. Okay, would you please? Scott.
All right, Crawford, thank you. I have a comment related to actually all four, even though we only heard from three, and that was in the, they were obviously impressive this morning with their elevator speech. OCEC was just really impressed with a lot of questions that we were able to ask of all the candidates, and all four just showed themselves to be excellent candidates for CAB. And I only wish Brenda Lee could have been here too, because she was very impressive in her presentation to OCEC.
Thank you, Scott. Are there any other questions? And by the way, when we're done here, I was able, and the reason I'm fumbling around here a little bit, I was able to call up some of the questions, Scott, that we did ask her, and I have one or two responses that I can share with the group when we're finished with the other applicants, if that's okay with you, Scott.
Oh, I think that's a great idea. And I'm assuming if you're going to do that, then we're going to have the opportunity to vote for Brenda Lee also, maybe?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, super.
Okay. All right.
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Scott. Any other questions from board members? Again, I don't have my screen up, so Monique, you'll have to help me here because I've got something else on my screen.
No problem. I can see everyone.
Okay, may we now move to the community at large? Are there any questions from those in the public, the community at large? None being heard. Okay, I guess now Scott and I generally talk about some questions for applicants for OCEC. I was able, after fumbling around here a little bit, to find maybe a little bit of information to share with the board at large regarding Brenda Lee. Brenda lives in Richmond. She's retired. And I'm trying to think of a word to describe this woman. Energy, she's enthusiastic, and by George, if I'm correct, she's retired from a position, I believe, as an analyst at University of California, Berkeley. And it was interesting in talking to this lady that she really has a need to work and assist formerly incarcerated individuals. And that's kind of been a theme for her. And she's also interested in working with resources and developing resources where they are lacking for returning citizens. So those are just a few tidbits or notes that I made during the interview with OCEC. And again, if there are any other members of OCEC who would have comments on this lady, please share. Oh, one other thing. She is also, if I'm correct, an election clerk, and she worked in the elections yesterday. So that's the kind of a brief synopsis of what I have to share with you regarding the lady, and she was an impressive applicant. Are there any questions from the board?
No questions for me, Crawford. I'd just like to add to that when you said, well, you were searching for a word. Certainly exuded credibility, approachability, but also command and control. Came through loud and clear.
Yes.
I'm looking forward, if she passes the gauntlet here, to be working with Brenda.
Excellent comment, Scott. Yes.
Crawford, I have a comment too. I can't find my raise your hand thing. So I just want to say, like I said, I apologize. Crawford and I, and Scott and I, we talk a lot about the agenda planning, and I did fail to mention that Brenda Lee, she went on out of town with her daughter. I think she said to Detroit. So she definitely contacted me early enough to state she wouldn't be present. But I do want to say, it seemed that the OCEC board was very impressed with Brenda and her interview. So on her behalf, I wanted to mention that.
Thank you very much, Monique, to wrapping that up for us. Well, we've had an opportunity to hear from 3 of the applicants, and we had 2 surrogates for Brenda. So that now leaves us to consideration for these 4 applicants to be considered for future vacancies with CAB, either as alternates or as full members, as we work towards the end of the year with various changes occurring. For example, Lila will be terming out, etc. So that's kind of our situation. And Patrice, maybe you could give us some guidance here, and Monique, as to how do we want to state this motion?
So the motion would be, you make a motion to approve the 4 candidates for alternate positions in CAB, or no, I would say to fill the vacancies in CAB. And then with the caveat that they will go on to the CCP meeting. We will try to get it on the November 18th, but we may not be able to. So it would definitely be on the December CCP agenda. So just, you can modify it as well, but that's how it was stated.
Okay.
And Lila has her hand up.
Yes, Lila.
Yeah, my question is about the current board makeup. Do we have any current openings at this time for alternates, or is our board fully staffed with the regular 9, I think it's 9 voting members and the 3 alternates?
No, if you guys want, I could chime in on that. I was trying to find the membership list because I usually put it on there, but I don't see it. But so, we have 2 vacancies in CAB for full body seats, which you've approved for Reverend Van Hook and Joel to fill those seats. And then we've had another resignation from Michelle immediately. So that will be another seat. Oh, well, I'm sorry, she was going to be in the seat, but now, so we actually have 2 alternate seats that are vacant because you approved for Evan Decker to fill the alternate seat. So, which that will be on the CCP agenda for November.
Maybe the best way to cover this, it's like Mirage, Lila. We've got vacancies to fill. We have people in the queue to fill them, but we haven't been able to get to CCP to get on the agenda. So therefore, we're kind of in no person's land, no man's, no woman's land. We have the positions available, but based on the slots that they'll be able to fill, we'll do that as we are moving towards the end of the year. And also, Lila, we are receiving whether certain members will renew or they will move on. So that's where the confusion is. We should have all of this wrapped up in the next maybe 30 days or less. And then we'll know exactly what slots. Now, if I am mistaken or didn't explain that clearly, either Monique or Patrice, if you, there it is. Maybe you could help me out.
Jill has her hand up, but that sounds accurate to me, but Jill has her hand up.
Yes, Jill.
I can wait till you finish through this part of the discussion. I just have a question after you're done.
The only thing that I would add is that I'm extremely, impressed with the 3 applicants who are here today and able to speak. If it sounds like there won't be a shortage of positions, but if there aren't alternate, openings for folks in November for everyone, I would just, advocate all 3 that were here today. And I hope that there will be also space for Brenda Lee. And thank you everybody for your presentations and for expressing interest.
Lila, maybe just to piggyback, there will be space, and the board, it's a 12-member board with 3 alternates. So there will be plenty of space for each of the applicants that have been presented today.
Maybe I'll jump in and ask my clarifying question before Patrice does, because I think she can answer my question on this. So, as you stand right now, you've got 2 vacancies that you're moving Julius and Joel up to those 2 vacancies, which leaves 3 alternate seats available as of, today's meeting. You've got 4 applicants, but only 3 seats available. And my other question is, this discussion has happened in the past where if you're going to appoint them, recommend their appointment in November, when does their term start, and does that shorten their ability to serve 3 years? Because is this year considered their first term, and then they only have 2 terms after this, given the way that the body is set up? Or would it be best to wait and make this your full slate in January when the new terms start? I guess that's my question, and maybe Patrice could help answer that.
So a couple of things. Thanks, Jill, and hi, everybody. So yeah, as it currently stands, we will have 3 vacant alternate member seats, but we also polled all of the existing members. And so we are anticipating some resignations as well. So there is, as Crawford mentioned, there's going to be sort of a reshuffling. So I will say that we will ultimately, where we will land is that we will have a slot available for everyone that has currently applied. That will also mean that we will still have maybe 1 or 2 vacancies in the alternate member position once it's all said and done. Okay. Now with that, if for those who would be approved by CCP, let's say on in November, it would not be that they are serving out the remaining of this year, given that we're in November of the end of the calendar year, would not equate, them being effective this year would not equate for them having served a full year of service. So we would actually want to consider giving them a full 12-month period so that they can have a full year of service for their 3-year term. We can take a look once we kind of get a better sense of who would sit in what slot. And the reason being is because so far the process has been that those, depending on who was approved first in the alternate member seats by seniority, those have usually been moved up in line, sort of like next in line to fill that voting member seat. But given that we have a lot of folks that are coming on at the same time, we'll have to do some shuffling of who will be placed in which seat. Once we kind of get a sense of that, then we can also look at what would make the most sense in terms of their membership effective date, whether it should start immediately for the purposes of maintaining quorum for the next several meetings for the remainder of this year, or if we should wait till January. Should it be that we wait till their membership status starts in January, we would still want to encourage folks to still attend meetings and participate, particularly as we are starting to schedule your annual retreat, and getting feedback from them as it relates to whatever information that they would like to also see as they're being oriented into the process. So hopefully I made that clear. If I jumbled up some things, my apologies. We are just kind of getting sort of a mix of things coming out toward the end of the year, but we certainly want to have it straightened out and as clear as possible, at least for the beginning of 2023.
So to piggyback on that, just to make sure I'm clear on what I heard and what I think has been decided in the past, it makes sense for the two alternates to move up in the November CCP meeting because they're current members. And then maybe in the December CCP meeting, ask for the full slate of new membership as of January. Is that what I'm hearing, Patrice?
Yeah, yes. And also, but that full slate. So some of the members today, or some of the applicants today may very well end up in a voting member seat because of the turnover we're anticipating to begin for next year. So
yeah, that's what I mean. So you're going to present the full slate in December to CCP, including the addition of the new members and the subtraction of those who are not going to move forward, so that come January, you hit the ground running with as full a membership as you can.
Yes, yes.
Now, with all of that being said, how do we frame this dad blame motion?
So I would say that you can, your motion can be to recommend that the that the four applicants be approved, recommend that the four applicants be approved for recommendation by CCP for membership on CAB.
Well said. Now, can we get a motion or somebody to agree with Patrice and then a second?
I would like to make.
Oh, go ahead.
I would like to make a motion that we recommend the four candidates to CCP for membership of CAB.
I second the motion.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? That is by the board. First of all, any discussion by the board? Is there any discussion by the public at large? None being heard, let's call the vote, please. Monique,
Okay,
yeah, thank you.
yes, just 1 second, let me find the agenda again so I can put it, display it. Okay, so that motion was Lenita, and the second was Nicole. I'm not sure.
Yes, that's me.
Nicole.
Yes, okay. So Lenita made the motion, Nicole, second. Okay, so I'll do a vote now. So Crawford,
Aye.
Lila,
Aye.
Scott. You're on mute.
Yeah, that's a yes.
Terry,
Aye, mateys.
Ozzy,
Aye.
Nicole,
Aye.
Lenita,
Aye.
and Nikenya.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, LaTanya, Raina, Justin, and in absentia, Brenda, welcome to the fold. We got one more hurdle to cross and we should be ready to move forward. And again, thank you so much for taking the time to be available. And if you desire, you're more than welcome to remain for the rest of the meeting. If you have other pressing issues, we understand, but your names will be moving forward, and thank you so very much.
Just one quick question on that, Crawford.
Oh,
And
yes.
Patrice, do you anticipate that they should be present at the CCP meeting? I don't know how you guys do that.
In the past, yes, we'd like for them to be there if at all possible, if they don't have work schedules that would conflict with the CCP meeting. Yes, to answer your question, Jill.
And then just one follow-up question, Crawford, and maybe to Patrice, as you were talking about transition of different positions and vacancies on the different subcommittees, as that information becomes available, it'd be great to know so that we would have an opportunity to sit on those boards in advance of being put into that position.
Okay.
Absolutely. And once we, I'm not sure how long you're planning to be on for today's discussion, but we do have an agenda item related to the CAB's annual retreat, which sort of sets the stage for planning for the next year. That it also includes where members can select which subcommittees they'll like to join. So we can talk more once we get to that item.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Are there any questions from the board or the public before we move to the next agenda item? Not seeing or hearing any other questions, let's move to agenda item number 6, which is our budget proposals for FY 23-24 109 budget proposals / recommendations. It was in your attachment 3, pages 28 through 30. And Nicole and Patrice, would either of you care to walk us through what we have in front of us?
Yeah, so I'll take a first stab at it, and then Nicole, you're more than welcome to add any additional comments you might have. So what you're seeing before you all today is your recommended budget proposal for the community programs for the fiscal year 23-24. As you all may recall, we spent the last several months going through prior years budget proposal, which you all had approved a 3% COLA increase for 3 fiscal years, beginning in fiscal year 22-23, ending in 24-25. So last year's budget proposal form looks different from this one. So just FYI on that. We only have 1 year outlined here, which is for 23-24. You all recommend or agree that you'd like to see for the community programs a 5% COLA increase, which is reflected here in order for the community programs, which are all contracted CBO service providers, to be in alignment and on par with the COLA increases that all county departments have already received. So prior year's allocation was around 5.8. With that 5% COLA increase, the total amount would go to would be just a little over 6 million. This is separate from your other budget recommendations that we have discussed in Programs and Services Committee, as well as in Policy and Budget, relating to the increase in AB 109 reserves, where you would like to see more funding being allocated to other county departments to expand services in housing, behavioral health, and I'm missing one more, but we could discuss that. I can go into further detail about that after this, but this is the proposal before you that would be included in the CCP's agenda packet for the November meeting, where there will be a budget workshop. And for our newer folks that are on the line, CCP during their November meeting reviews the budget proposal of all funded agencies to consider what the distribution of AB 109 or allocations should be for the next fiscal year. So we're always planning a year a year in advance. I will pause there to answer any questions. The one thing I do want to, I'm sorry, I'm not going to pause. One thing I want to call out is that on the third sheet of this, Monique, if you could scroll down, excuse me, is the listing of each of the contracted providers and their breakdowns as well. So in the first page, you see the total amounts, and this final page is broken down per contractor and service function. Okay. And I'll stop to answer any questions or allow for Nicole if she has any additional comments to offer.
For that section, no, you pretty much covered everything. In reference to that particular section, it was just around that 5% in COLA increase. So there's nothing more to add. Thank you.
Again, to repeat what Patrice had asked, are there any questions from board members or the public at large? Any questions?
This is a minor question, and I know, yeah, sometimes my questions are very detailed and out of curiosity. And so I noticed that in the budget, there was just $3,000 for the operating expenses for CAB. And I was just curious, since we're all on the CAB, like what that looks like, what kind of supports come out of the AB 109 budget for supporting this body here.
Yeah, so that was an allocation that was that had been requested of CAB actually a few years ago, prior to COVID, for the opportunity to utilize resources for CAB. I don't want to say events, more or less specific, whether it be trainings or facilitation or things of that nature that you all would need or request specifically for CAB's work. And so about $3,000 allocation was set aside for that purpose. In the past, some of those resources had gone into supporting the planning and facilitation of your annual retreat. When it was done in person, those retreats, you know, would require some costs for food and things of that, and printing materials and things of that nature. So some funding would be set aside for those purposes. Granted, now because of COVID, we haven't had those in-person meetings, so haven't really felt a need to pull from that. However, you all are more than welcome to suggest or recommend other uses for that would support your work going forward. So that's essentially where that 3,000 allocation comes from.
Thank you, Patrice. That's helpful.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. This is Juanita.
Mm-hmm.
So on page 31, or the fourth page of this, I see that Miss Shirley's and Fast Eddie's are both listed. And just out of curiosity, why are they not listed on the third page?
Yeah, great question. So those were subcontracted organizations with the reentry network. They are still, what we did in the prior, or the budget proposal form before this one, is just collapse the total amount that's allocated to Health Right 360 to manage the reentry network, which would include these resources as well. So instead of outlining the subcontractors of the contractors, we just included the primary contractors for that are receiving these resources. And in the network's case, they subcontract out with Miss Shirley's and Central Force. They do not subcontract any longer with Fast Eddie's.
Okay. Do we know why they don't subcontract anymore with Fast Eddie's?
Yeah, so in their proposal for this next 3-year contract cycle, they decided to shift their programming a little bit to have more of a focus on substance use disorder treatment and transitional housing that could be provided for that regard. So they just shifted their service offerings just a little bit to better meet the needs of the clientele that they were seeing at the time.
Okay.
Are there any other questions and specifically Lenita, did that clarify for you?
Yeah, it did clarify for me. I don't have any other questions, but I do have a comment that I would love to have on record. Miss Shirley's and Fast Eddie's are both two services that the reentry population use a lot in East County. I do have working experience with both of them, and they are wonderful organizations, and they do a lot for our community. And so it's a little sad for me to see that Fast Eddie's isn't on there anymore, because he has designed curriculum and a program for people who want to learn how to own and operate mechanic services and mechanic shops. And in East County, that's a service that's really needed. So for people who are coming home who would like that education and that certification, he is like the best in East County to get it from. And so it's a little sad to see that they are they have moved into a different direction. So I just want to note that.
Just a question, would there be an opportunity to maybe dig into that further, Patrice? Or is this kind of, this is it for the proposal? Or
When you say dig in a little further, what exactly are you speaking to?
Well, when I say,
for
example, when we went through our pillars and we looked at our top three were geared towards mental health, housing, and jobs. And I kind of, I'm kind of rethinking here, what better avenue for jobs than something similar. It doesn't have to be Fast Eddie's, but something in that nature. We're talking about jobs as being our pillars and the top three things that were identified by agencies and partners that were needed. And we're going to go in another direction. That's why I asked, is there an opportunity to reevaluate that?
Patrice.
So what I could do is, I see that Michael Pitts is on the line and he has his hand up. He represents the Reentry Network at HealthRight. So I think he could speak a little bit more specifically to the shift in direction with regards to Fast Eddie's for this specific contract. But before I give it over to him, there's also we also still have Rubicon Programs that's providing employment services. That's the largest employment provider in your budget at this stage. And then we also have EHSD's Workforce Development Board that are also receiving AB 109 resources to provide some employment support as well. So just keep in mind that the employment piece is sort of spread out in different areas. Now, to Lenita's point about Fast Eddie specifically, I know in the past they've also received innovation funding to do a what was it called? It's like an in-jail reach sort of correspondence to connect with people before that they are released. And my understanding is that they're also in other circles where they're continuing to provide some resources for the reentry population. They're just no longer formally funded through a subcontract for the reentry network. So, but we can continue to engage them, bring them part of the fold in our partners and providers meetings that we have every other month. Those meetings are for not only AB 109 contracted providers, but really any provider out in the field that's serving the reentry population, because it's really important that we leverage those relationships, even if they're not directly funded. They may have another funding source in providing a resource that others are not aware of, right? So we can certainly continue to engage them so that they are part of the system of services. And then I'll pass over to Michael if he has some things he wanted to say.
Hey, thank you, Patrice. Hey, I just wanted to say that I agree with the assessment of Facilities. It was great working with them, but I don't want it to come across like that it was a decision for the network just to jettison them, and that wasn't the plan. It was more of a mutual thing. I believe that they decided that they were going to do some other things. So my understanding is that Facilities is still providing the vocational training, but it's just not under the umbrella of the reentry network. And they, of course, they are still working with reentry folks. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear.
Michael and Patrice, thank you so very much for that clarification. And good to see you, Michael, by the way. And Lenita, hopefully the comments that the two of them made will enlighten you a little bit more. I think that enlightened me. And Fast Eddies will have an opportunity, as Patrice spelled out, to still be engaged. So maybe we got a win-win out of this and we can move forward. Are there any other questions?
Thank you for the information.
And thank you for the question. Now we have, if I'm correct now, Monique, we'll circle back to Monique. Oh, wait a minute, we don't want to vote yet. Are there any other questions? Because this is a voting item, Monique, and let's not rush. Okay, then let's now vote on these particular recommendations. Is there a motion?
I just have a quick question, Crawford. Are we voting only on the 5% COLA, or are we going into more of the recommendations that policy and budget discuss? Or
I
Patricia, did I get confused?
Oh no, we're not just doing the COLA. We're going on. We're voting on what we have in front of us. We have a document for dollars, and you reached out, and so we should vote on the document that is presented to us.
Okay.
And if I can interject really quickly, so Nicole, I will, after you guys take this vote here, I will update you all on some behind the scenes discussions, if you will, with regards to those additional budget recommendations that you guys have. So it's more or less a process thing. So I will share that in just a minute.
I motion to approve. Did I jump too far?
Okay. We need a motion and then a second.
Well, I motion.
Okay, Nicole, this is your bailiwick, so possibly you could give us a motion.
Nicole just made the motion, and this is Lila Blanchard, and I second approving this budget recommendation for the AB 109 for our area that we have, yeah, that we can advise on.
There's one heck of a motion. Okay, we have a motion. Is there further discussion? From the board first.
I just want to say that I appreciate Dr. Pitt and Patrice for your information on explaining the questions that I had. Thank you for the answers.
Any other questions or discussion from the board? Monique, I don't see any. Do you on your screen? All right, let's move to the public. Any other questions from the public or those who have joined our call? Any questions? Seeing none, would you please call the vote, Monique?
Okay, Crawford,
Aye.
Nicole,
Aye.
Lila,
Aye.
Nikinya,
Aye.
Scott,
Aye.
and Terry,
Aye.
and Ozzy.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
And Lenita.
And Lenita, I'm sorry. Lenita. Aye, okay. Motion passes unanimously. I was really trying to follow everybody on the screen.
Okay,
Sorry.
well, thank you. Now, have we, and did we include that? Now, we have also on our agenda attachment 4. I believe we kind of talked about attachment 4. I just don't want to skip over an agenda item. I believe we did cover this when we were referring to the subcontractors, etc. So this is covered. I want to make sure we don't move too fast here. Was that covered, Monique and Patrice? Attachment?
Yeah, so we
Good.
shared this as reference, so you can see what was proposed last year compared to what you're proposing this year.
Great, great then. All right, any questions or comments prior to moving to the next agenda item?
Yes, so I do want to follow up on the second part of the budget conversations that both programs and services and policy and budget have been engaged in. So as you all know, for some time, there's been some sort of loose discussions, if you will, around the fact that our AB 109 reserves have grown quite significantly. We're looking at close to about 38 million in AB 109 reserves. And this was discussed at a previous finance committee discussion surrounding how to, or whether or not Stand Together COCO should continue to be funded through AB 109 resources. And there were questions and concern, or questions from board members about what other reentry services are needed that could be supported. So given those earlier conversations, and then obviously with CCP having had the opportunity to go through CAB's recommendations during the September meeting, it was very clear that there is opportunities to fund additional programming, particularly for the areas that I think both between CAB and CCP, just collectively, we can agree that more could be done in that regard. So I've been in conversations with Paul Reyes at the CAO's office to talk about what's the best process to begin spending down some of those reserves. Also acknowledging that we still need to maintain a threshold in the event of some sort of economic downturn, that reserves are still sufficient to cover the cost of existing programming. What will likely take place at the November CCP meetings, that in addition to discussions of the various budget requests from all funded agencies, Paul will give an overview of projected revenues for the next year, as well as really starting to open up the conversation around the fact that we have a pretty sizable AB 109 reserve. That discussion had not taken place at the CCP level just yet. So out of respect for those members, he'd like to at least have open dialogue at that level. From there will be some planning around how we establish a process for all funded agencies to consider what additional programming they'd like to develop or create that those AB 109 reserves could help fund. The preliminary idea, I would say, is that that the ability to utilize some of the AB 109 reserves will be considered as a one-time allocation and not an ongoing funding availability, and also to require potential funded agencies to then set aside some resources for some sustainability planning around those additional programs. This will likely then be presented back once a process is sort of mapped out, and I know internally folks are looking at potentially how Measure X was done, where they received proposals from various agencies to present or propose programs or services that would align with what Measure X is trying to accomplish, but maybe on a more simplified scale for these AB 109 reserves. So once a process is sort of put in place, that will be presented to the full CCP. What we're also pushing for is that CAB's recommendations be prioritized. So that way, any agency that is looking to bring on board some additional programming, that they would first look at what CAB is proposing. And I can share with you guys what has been discussed between programs and services and policy and budget, so you can get a clear sense of what those budget recommendations would be. But for those agencies to prioritize those in their proposal, and then from there consider how they like to go about selecting and funding those proposals for a one-time allocation. So that's sort of the preliminary overview of as to what has been discussed so far in terms of how this may very well roll out. And I can take a pause at this point to answer any questions that you all might have in that regard, just keeping in mind that it's still very preliminary and early. The idea is also that some of this would be presented before the full board because it was discussed in the finance committee, and we'd also like to bring this before the PPC when the time comes. So it's going to be a little bit more lengthier. It will likely be a lengthier process than going through the traditional AB 109 budgeting route, given the sort of new approach to this and the likelihood that this will be a one-time allocation.
Are there any other okay, Lila?
Hello again. So I know that was one huge takeaway was the reserves in the budget for AB 109. I was trying to look through my notes and find the correct terminology, but it also seemed like there was more and more money coming into the regular budget and not just the reserve. So I wish I was framing this question more clearly, but I want to put it out there and just see, because it seemed like in our conversation with the policy and budget subcommittee that there were more monies than just the reserve fund, and that we were hopeful that we could actually ask for an increase for some ongoing services. So hopefully that question makes sense. And Terry, if you're gonna say that question in a better way than I did, I'm all for it.
Terry.
No promises. But so Patrice, you mentioned that you could share some of the information that we discussed in programs and services and that policy and budget did. I'm just wondering if you could do that now to kind of frame what we're talking about and give.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
So when programs and services met, I want to say this was during your October meeting, the subcommittee agreed to recommend to policy and budget that a full use of increased revenue and a drawdown from the reserve balance be used to expand ongoing mental health services, substance use disorder treatment services, and supportive housing specifically for the reentry population. And you all recommended that the agencies that would administer these expansions would be the Behavioral Health Division, H3, and maybe possibly within your own budget landscape here, which is the community programs. From that, policy and budget did a little further digging in their October meeting, and they expounded on on programs and services recommendations to suggest what those specific services would be in the areas of housing and behavioral health. So with regards to funding, seeing additional funding for H3, policy and budget will recommended supportive housing for individuals with co-occurring disorders, establishing a justice system core team that would do that would provide transportation from the time of release from any of the 3 detention facilities, and then place them within bridge housing for newly released individuals, and then also having some bridge housing available for folks who are exiting the AODS system. There was also a call out for more rental subsidies, and I think, and to recommend that this goes beyond just AB 109 population, but that this would serve the general reentry population. There was also a mention about using innovation funds for housing individuals with disabilities. And then on the behavioral health side, there was recommendations for increasing outpatient services and having more training for behavioral health staff, and having that staff be stationed throughout the community at various community program locations. So though there was not specific dollar amounts called for, what policy and budget landed, where they landed, was to at least specify the service components they like to see these resources be used toward within those respective agencies.
Yeah, so thank you for that. There's so much money available, and it's an incredible opportunity. So I'm just looking now for us to figure out, how do we dissect all this? You know, we have ideas about areas that would be good, and we were reminded today about jobs also. Yeah, in programs and services, we did talk about using the money to support the existing county agencies so that we're not building separate silos. I'm hearing you today say that we have to think about it as one-time money. So if it's one-time money, we can't add staff, right? So I guess all I'm doing right now is throwing out problems for us to figure out and untangle. But yeah, what are our next steps? How do we have this conversation? What are the forums we do it in? I'll just stop talking.
So what I can suggest is that during the budget workshop at the next CCP meeting, you will hear each funded agency go over. They will present their budget proposal for the next fiscal year. And typically in that presentation, time is made available for any feedback from CCP members as well as members of the public. So that could be an opportunity, depending on, because at this point, you also don't know what any of these agencies are planning for next year, if they are going to request some additional funding already for other services, or if they're going to submit a status quo budget request similar to what you guys are doing here. So I would say, in listening to each of the funded agencies' presentation of their budget requests, that might be an opportunity for CAB members to say or recommend, hey, as we have gone through our recommendations at the prior meeting, we'd like to see you guys take on X, Y, and Z. So that's one way to go about it. So that way, in real time, you get a sense of what they are planning for next year, or what they are requesting budget-wise next year, and whether or not what you're recommending is either in alignment with what they are proposing, or you give them that sort of extra nudge to say, hey, we'd actually like to see you do more.
Yeah, so that sounds good to hear it in real time and be able to talk about it. I'm wondering, I don't want folks at that meeting to just think that we're doing the COLA recommendation. How do we do like a placekeeper to let them know that we're actually starting discussions about how to spend a bigger chunk of that budget?
I can certainly give, well, I will, two things. I will say CAO's office is aware of the funding increases that you all are seeking and would like to see be taken into account. I think where there may be an opportunity for you guys to then engage in real time is again, during those, when those budget requests are being made by those respective agencies, because in these recommendations that you're making, you're recommending that certain agencies take on work that we may or may not have engaged in conversations with them about, right?
Mhm.
So the good thing is that during the last CCP meeting, there seemed to have been some consensus of the broad policy recommendations that you all have brought forward. So during the budget workshop conversation, this is an opportunity for CAB members to say, we want to see our recommendations be taken a step further and seeing some adoption across different agencies, given where CCP members landed and feeling like these are definitely items that should be moved forward.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say, I see the other hands, is if we're going to participate in real time in that discussion, it seems to me Crawford should be voicing what our priorities are. Patrice, I heard you say something about having input during that time, and it just seems to make sense if it's not already decided that that we need a spokesperson, and that would be Crawford to advocate for our stuff. Thanks.
I think Jill, oh, by the way, no problem, Terry. If asked, I will proceed. Jill, you had a question, and then Nicole.
Well, yeah, more of a comment and sort of an overview. So just a reminder to everyone that, the November meeting is a presentation of everyone's budgets. That agenda will be released 96 hours ahead of the meeting. So it gives Crawford and anyone else time to review what the budget asks are by each department. And then it's a great opportunity to formulate your public comments, Crawford, on behalf of the CAB, highlighting, where you see the increased budget asks aligning with what your discussions have been. So it's an introduction to the CCP as to what you've already been discussing, right? And then they come back in December at the next CCP meeting and do approvals and more discussion on all those budgets. It's also a great opportunity, to point that you look forward to being part of the process to discuss the spending down of the excess funds as well. It's a beginning of a conversation. It's certainly not the one and only conversation. And then, that way it's in the record as well that you know that you'll be part of those ongoing discussions about spending down the excess, which that will be a whole different discussion. And there's different ways that the county does that when there's a lump of excess funds, and there's already some best practices in the county as to how we handle that. So you don't have to fund ongoing programming, but more like sometimes pilot programs.
Thank you, Jill. Nicole?
I had a question, but listen to Jill, I have to rethink my question. So it was a question and a comment. I really appreciate the feedback that Terry just mentioned, and Crawford, I would love to be able to spearhead that with you if you are asked to talk, because I was listening to Patrice and Terry has some really good feedback on when I understand what you guys are saying is looking at those recommendations that will be presented at CCP, and forgive me if I'm saying it wrong, Patrice, but then looking at what the programs are offering, and they're also looking at our recommendations to see if they're already asking for money to be moved around based on what we're saying? And if not, then as from CAB, we can then say, you know, here's what we're recommending that you guys should possibly do, right? Is that what I'm hearing? And then listening to you, Jill, they'll be presenting in November, but we can come back in December and talk about that, or?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
sorry, I confused you, sorry. So yeah, everything Patrice said. And in November, you will have that opportunity to make all of those comments
Okay,
ahead of time, so that when it comes back for the final decision in December, it's another opportunity to add more feedback
Got it.
as well. But at least you get in the very first part that, you know, if there's program additions, like, because the departments will come forward and say, we want an extra X number of dollars to do this program. And it may align with what you all feel the reentry community needs. And so it's a great opportunity for you to verbalize support of that ask, so that when it comes to December, you know, you can kind of get a feeling for where things are going.
Okay, thank you. That answered my question, Crawford.
Okay, great, great. So we'll be busy, Nicole. Lila.
Yes.
So I wanted to clarify my earlier question. I think that we were looking at the reserve amounts, but we were also looking at the gradual increase of the base funding. And I understand that it's difficult to, you know, bank on how much that base funding will be, but it has continued to grow, and it has continued to be more and more. And so I think my question is, you know, moving forward, how would CAB, you know, make recommendations in regards to those funds, as well as, you know, the large revenue reserves, excuse me.
I think I'm trying to understand your question correctly. How can CAB make a give feedback or on the ongoing use of the base allocations? Am I hearing that correctly? Yeah, so I think more or less that's something that you can certainly state during the budget workshop. So just so you guys know how the meeting will likely flow, or at least on that particular agenda item, is that Paul Reyes will give the big breath overview of the funding formulas and the calculations and how much our county is getting from the state, previous allocations versus current allocation, and what he's projected to see, or what the state's projected to see for us in the next year or so. Then from all of that, he's going to also discuss what our current expenses have been, right, over the period of time. So you can begin to see what our expenses versus our revenues are looking like. I think that after his presentation, there's certainly opportunity for comments to be made. And I think that will be a good point to make at that particular point in time, that CAB is recognizing an increase in annual revenues, and that should be taken advantage of. However, and I certainly don't want to put words in your mouth, so however way you would want to frame CAB's role in that, I would say that would be a good time to share that.
Was that sufficient for you, Lila?
It's working. It's working, and thank you for answering my question, Patrice. I think I'm just you know, hopeful that we can identify monies, you know, with all of this, I don't want to say extra cash floating around connected to the AB 109 budget, but how we can, you know, get that to work long-term, you know, for participants who desperately need it. So I think that, you know, the solutions that the policy and budget, or the recommendations around this further funding, would probably be better served with ongoing funding in these areas. And so I think that's, you know, what I'm getting at, and where I'm looking towards.
Fine. Well, based on these discussions here, it looks like Lila and Nicole, myself, Terry, you're welcome to join. We're going to have to pick up the pace here by that next meeting. So maybe each of us could get our points together. We'll get with Patrice and we'll be prepared for Paul Reyes. Now, how's that? So we've chatted about it. So what is it? There's one thing to articulate. Now it's time to initiate. So the ball's in our court. So we got to get to work. How's that?
And I will say, given that Chief Eamon Kraus is the chair for CCP, she is, the way that she runs the CCP meetings, as you all have witnessed, she definitely creates space for conversation, for dialogue. So just wanting to put that out there in case there's at any point some hesitation in giving feedback on certain agenda items within CCP. I mean, that's essentially the whole purpose of the creation of CAB, is to bring forth that community perspective, especially during those particular meetings where they'll need to hear that as they are thinking through their own service offerings or how their existing service programs are operating. I think with, let's use, for example, H3, they're essentially only receiving AB 109 funds at this moment just for shelter beds. And so though that is incredibly important, we also know that H3 does a ton of other housing related services just for the general public. So that's an opportunity for them to then hear from CAB to say, we want to connect the dots here, that we want to see more of that sort of robust programming for the reentry population, and their budget as it currently stands via AB 109 resources does not allow for that. How can we close the gap on that? So, certainly lift those things up as you have the opportunity during the CCP meetings.
Thank you, Patrice. And I was, specifically thinking about H3 and how, it can kind of lift folks' spirits to have some, innovation funds or one-time monies. And it sees like, oh, this is helping and this is great, but then it's cut off and we're, back to the same place where we still don't have enough housing to support folks in reentry. So thank you for identifying that. And I'm hopeful that as we move forward, we can find the strategy and be successful in advocating for, dollars to be added to, H3's budget and for longer term housing and not just shelter, along with the other recommendations. So thank you, Patrice.
All right, why don't we move forward here? We kind of have to have a time check. We do have some other items to discuss, and we want to get to our report. So with your permission, the board, I'd like to move to the next agenda item. Are there any other comments before we move to the next agenda item? And that was a great conversation. And I made the notes here. Terry, Lila, Nicole, myself, Patrice, we got a little work to do between now and next Friday. So that's where we are. So Terry, again, thank you so very much for bringing this to the forefront. Let's take a deep breath here. Our revised operating guidelines. Needless to say, this is, by the way, item number 7 on the agenda. This has been quite a journey. Going back to December now, that's December of 2021, we had an ad hoc committee and the doggone committee stalled. Not to be deterred, we adopted another approach where just Dale and I had discussions where we went through the document page by page, item by item, and proposed changes. We then solicited input from Patrice, Monique, and thank you, Jill. And we then put together this final document. Too bad now that Dale is not with us to see the fruits of his efforts. let's begin, and I'll try to walk you through the key points of our recommendations here. To begin, if you would go to Article 2, Section 2. This section here, which is essentially a cleanup of various items. Look to the right, and you'll see here the detail there. Thank you with the cursor. We're just cleaning up various items. It's a cleanup item to clarify things and to simplify language. Were there any questions there? None being heard, let's move to Article 4, Section 1. Article 4, Section 1. Are we there? Just a minute so that you can see. There we are. Article 4, Section 1.
Crawford, I know we're super short on time. I just wanted to lift up my hand and briefly say, I think you just asked for comments on the request to attend half of the CCP meetings. Is that correct? Were you
Lila, excuse me, which article are you referring to?
It's the first comment on the document.
Okay, so you mean, okay, so you are referring to Article 2, Section 2. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes. Do you want questions only now or questions and comments?
Well, comments too, so we can get those in quickly and then we'll take those under advisement. Yes.
I just thought that it was quite an increase to ask for all members of CAB to attend half of the CCP meetings. I think that might have been challenging for me, with my schedule and when those meetings were scheduled, since they're, not really scheduled around us. And so I'm just wondering if maybe we want to stair step that and, ask for people to attend, a quarter of the meetings or 2 to 3 meetings. That was my only comment on that piece.
Thank you. And here's what we can do, and the whole purpose of this is to see if there are issues and if you think that it may be too much, because then we can go back and reconsider what we have written here. So thank you, Lila. The next item. Now, any other comments on that before we go to Article 3, Section 4? Got to go to Article 3, it's Section 4. There we are. Okay, there we are, Section 4. And it talks here about we're asking board for guidance in order to be fair to the body as a whole. Are there any comments here? You look at the comments on the right. And the comments on the right, could you move your cursor to those comments on the right? There we are. And you'll see what we're trying to do here. We're asking the group to put a limit or to limit the number of subcommittee meetings a member can miss. And this is kind of important. It's, we have to be able to operate. So therefore, we need our committee members for the general meeting as well as the subcommittee meetings or standing committee meetings to be in attendance. And as we said here, the language change is to account for a review process prior to an automatic renewal. So let me read this for you. Section 4, CAB members are required to attend all regularly scheduled meetings. Members may miss up to 3 regular meetings for any reason. The status of membership for any member who is absent from 4 regular meetings will be reviewed to determine automatic removal from CAB. And we're just asking of the board, is this reasonable when you consider we need quorums and we've got to conduct our work? Are there any comments? Hearing none, we'll
I'm
move.
sorry, I'll jump in there real quick. I was trying to raise my hand. just really briefly to this point, I think it might be helpful to identify how many subcommittee meetings folks can miss. And I would also include ambassador meetings in there as well, just because those meetings are also, you know, very important, you know, to have a quorum or to have more than, you know, one person at those meetings.
So Lila, I'm taking note of some of your recommended changes. I would have to say we probably will eliminate or not include the ambassador meetings, only because those aren't required meetings for the sake of maintaining a attendance record for your membership status. So that would be the only one we probably would not be able to include, but I am making note that you're recommending to include at least an attendance count for continued participation in the subcommittee level.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments in this area? Because we're coming down the home stretch, or any other comments? Okay, thank you. And then can you go now to Article 4, Section 1? Article 4 first. Okay, there's Section 1 right there. And here's all we're doing is clarifying officer resignations and then the process for how we will deal with those particular resignations. It's just clarification. It's basically going from the highest ranking order and moving down our chain of command, so to speak, or our leadership team is a better way to put it. Any comments there? Going once, going twice? Okay, thank you. Let's move now to the final area, go Article 6. Let's get to Article 6 first. And then we're Section 3. All right. Now let me see if I can, you know, go through or cut through the chase here. We have attempted to streamline our quorum procedure so that our standing committees are able to function in a smoother fashion. Please note the side comments. Those are our comments, and we should also acknowledge appreciation to each of the standing committee members for reflecting on their individual charge. Oh, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let's get to this part here. We've had problems at standing committee meetings with quorum. And what this enables us to do, if we have a committee of 3 or 4 people, and let's say 1 or 2 do not show up, and let's say it is not the committee that Lanita is on, but yet let's say Lanita's standing committee is OCEC. And she happens to attend programs and services, and they don't have a quorum, but they need 1 more person. Well, we're proposing to add, to be able to appoint Lanita as a pro tem member. Now, the process would be, if the chair is attending the meeting, then the chair would be appointed. If the vice chair is attending the meeting and the chair is not there, it would be the vice chair, and then you would go to the secretary, or you'd go to the leadership team. If nobody from the leadership team happens to be at a standing committee meeting, then, or at the OCEC meeting, then Lanita could attend that particular meeting. I think I turned that around, but let me say that a regular committee member of CAB would be able on a pro tem basis to serve, just so we could meet quorum. Now, again, we will propose that to county council. We're not sure if we can do it, but we're going to propose that to county council. Now, are there any other questions? Just a minute before I reach to Jill, are there any questions?
No questions, but just want to clarify a couple of things. This is a process that the Mental Health Commission had adopted, and the language that we received from Jill was also language that was approved by County Council. So it then allows for the pro tem member to be, or who can be assigned as a pro tem member is based on sort of the rank and order of the leadership. But there were questions about whether or not we should go beyond that and allow for any member that's in attendance to have the ability to serve as a member pro tem. And so that would be something that we would have to check in with County Council to see if that would if that would be accepted. But in the event it is not accepted, then this sort of order, if you will, by rank could still be in place. And if this is something that the CAB wants to follow, then that can certainly stay in place in this current language as you're reading it now.
Thank you, Patrice. Jill.
And that's what I just wanted to piggyback on that and just clarify. So my understanding with the Mental Health Commission, it's only the chair of the Mental Health Commission that can act as attaining quorum in a subcommittee meeting, Patrice. So that was my understanding. It wasn't any officer, I thought. It was just the chair. So maybe that could be clarified. And then the other question I had, and it sounds like you answered it, is there a precedent to just take any member of CAB? Do you know of any other advisory body in the county that, because I've never heard of that, and it was quite a process to get the one thing that the Mental Health Commission got, which is the chair to make a quorum. So I guess my point is being, it was a lengthy process to go through County Council for that. So if there isn't a precedent for that, I'm just not sure if it's worth the time to do that part, the any member part.
Well, Jill, maybe comment. I've had, I don't know whether I'll call it the pleasure or displeasure of sitting in on some of the standing committee meetings. And it is so frustrating when people commit their time, they show up and you're just shy one member. But
right. Yeah, Crawford, I'm not disagreeing with you. There's other advisory bodies that have had similar problems. It's not that at all. It's just whether or not legally that's something that can be agreed upon. And I'm just suggesting if there's no precedent in the county on that, then I'm just questioning the time and attention that it would take to get through County Council on doing any member versus just duplicating what another advisory body already was approved to do, which is the chair.
Well, we think it's important, the two of us or some of us that have looked at it, and I would like to pursue it with the county legal counsel.
And just to be clear, you're looking at probably at least a 6-month process, just FYI. So it's not a quick solution. So I'm just suggesting that if you want a quick solution, there's a quick solution. If you want to pursue the longer one, that's a secondary point.
Okay. Jill, not looking for a quick solution. As I stated at the beginning, we started this December of 2021. We're in it for the long run. And again, I would like to pursue this with county council. Terry?
I just wondered if we could two-step it and, approve the what Jill said of being able to do it as it's done elsewhere with the committee chair, and then continue to pursue the other.
Sounds good to me. Patrice.
Yeah, so I just wanted to also respond to your question or comment, Jill, about whether the chairperson is the only ranking member, if you will, to serve in the member pro tem position. As I'm reading the memo from County Council, the way they went about it for the Mental Health Commission is that if the chairperson declined, then the next one in line would be the vice chair. The vice chair declined, then any member of their executive committee to serve as a member pro tem. So in this case, because we don't have an executive committee to CAB, we just utilize the officer ranks in replace of that. So ideally it would be chair, but if for whatever reason the chairperson couldn't make it, then it would be CAB vice chair. If vice chair can't make it, be CAB secretary and so forth. And I think what Crawford is also recommending that we look into is whether or not any member could serve in that capacity. But at least we know there's precedence here to go by officer ranking.
And thank you, Jill, because it'll be a frustrating, long journey, but thanks. I think we can make that journey. So thank you. All right, then. That's kind of where we are. And we wanted to discuss that. And Patrice and Monique, I think at this point in time, we should give our board members a chance to digest this, and maybe we can circle back to it at our next meeting. And then we can figure out whether we want to vote on it and what our position should be on various items, if that's acceptable to move forward then. Okay, let's move then to a discussion of the scheduling for CAB's annual retreat. Okay, this is item number 8. And after participating in our last 2 retreats, we might want to consider having our retreat in January versus February. By having our retreat in January, we might be able to start our committee year in a more effective manner, and by getting down to business at an earlier date. Also, for those of you who attended last year's retreat, what could be done better, and what do you feel is needed to assist you in hitting the ground running as we move into next year? So I'm just throwing that out. Maybe the first question is, would you be interested in having that retreat in January? Because when you look at our workable year, when we would start the retreats in February, then it would take March before you could even get your committees going and meeting. And then by the time you get to October, November, your year is over. So we don't have a working year. And if we could maybe help ourselves by 1 month, we hit the ground running. In particular, and I think some of you are noticing with these ambassador programs, even though we pushed like the Dickens on these ambassador programs, we're still having problems getting scheduled, getting those meetings accomplished, and getting everything in sync. So that's the question. Any discussion on moving back, or your comments on a February retreat versus a January retreat? Just looking for comments.
So this is Nicole. Question for you and a comment. If we do move it to January, when will we start prepping for it?
Oh, that would probably have to be December, first part of January. It would be December, first part of January for prep.
So that would be my, I think it's a great idea to have it in January, just, being in my second year and, have a lot of feedback, especially as we have a lot of new people on things that I would have, wanted that could be helpful. But then I know December, a lot of us is either on vacation, the last 2 weeks of December, some places are closed. So I don't know if planning will be able to happen in December. So planning will have to happen. We'll have to do everything. I don't mind. But we would have to pretty much start getting stuff scheduled and dates put in to get everything up and running for January. So if that's something that I think it's feasible, if we all agree to be able to do that in January, it'd be great to have it a month before, because having it in February, we're kind of rushing for time to have our next call and get things up and running. And you don't really have if you haven't done this before, you don't have enough time to kind of get your feet wet and get acclimated with what you're doing. So
I'm willing to start in December. How's that?
depends on when December. any week but the last week.
Well, no, it wouldn't be. Well, wait a minute. Why don't we start on December 25th? I think that would be.
No. So I mean, I'm willing to start in December as well. I just know the last week
good.
we're off. So I mean, I don't mind the first. I'm available those first couple of weeks to begin as well.
I'd be willing to step up to the plate with you the first 2 weeks and let's see if we could make it happen. And again, just trying to throw it to the rest of the board here to get your thoughts.
I actually am available in December if you guys want some help. I have some free time and some downtime.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
So let me know.
We got a volunteer, Crawford.
Yeah, I'm writing Lanita down. Okay.
Yeah, I'll be around.
Okay, Lanita, I know. And then it'll really be Patrice and Monique because they'll really put that together, but then that would give us the opportunity to call various board members or reach out to them and just, get their input on the agenda, and we can start on that in effect, maybe over the next 2 weeks, what they would like to see and, how do we move forward? Any other comments? Patrice?
Jill put in the chat that your next CAB meeting is on December 8th. I don't know if it'll be helpful for you all, but we could certainly pull up again, at the very least, the PowerPoints from the prior year annual retreat, so you all can at least get a sense of or if not the PowerPoints, the agendas, so you all can get a sense of what the flow was last year. Just keep in mind the annual retreat is a 2-day event, if you will, that lasts for about 3 hours long. And one of those dates is your regular scheduled CAB meeting. So that would essentially mean that we would make January 12th one of the dates, which is the second Thursday of the month. January 12th would be one of the dates of your retreat. And then we would pick a second date to either start before or conclude, and we'll set it as a special meeting. You could also decide to just do another special meeting. Doesn't have to be on that exact CAP meeting date, but we just typically use that because we know for sure folks are typically going to show up for that regularly scheduled meeting. But so you have some variety as well in terms of which dates you want to schedule for in January for your annual retreat. And I think we could start mapping out how we'll plan for that based on the dates you want to go with.
Excellent then. Any other comments? And Patrice, I can reach out to you and Monique after this meeting, and we can kind of, sketch out some things and do a little groundwork to make it easier. And particularly want to make it easier on Nicole and Lanita, if possible. Well, maybe Lanita, but not Nicole. We'll let Nicole do all the work, so whatever. Okay, any other comments on the retreat and what you'd like to see? Any comments on what you would like to see at the retreat? Those of you that were there last year. Yes, Nicole.
I mean, I don't know if it's possible. I mean, I know, Patrice, that's something that we're working on. I doubt if it'll be in person. I can't wait until it is. But looking at how since we're on Zoom, it's 3 hours, and it's just a lot to take in. So finding ways to make sure that everybody actually is taking it in. I just know, like, it took me to my end of my second year to really feel like I'm be honest, know what I'm doing. And it'll be nice to for us that maybe more senior, I guess, season, to be able to help those that are new, making sure they really understand what they're expected to do. When you go through when you go through it, you really don't have the questions. So maybe a follow-up afterwards. You know, you're trying to retain all that information, so you really don't know what to ask on that day because it's so much. So just to make sure that everybody really grasps what they're going to be doing in CAB and try to just help each other a little bit more. So we can kind of brainstorm, Crawford or whomever, to kind of come up with, ideas to just be more, there for each other as they, join CAB, because it's a
Yes.
great thing to be a part of.
Okay. All right. Any other comments? Ozzy, you've been at those, and I understand we're a little we're past our time, but any comments here, and then we can move on. Ozzy, from you. You've been at these retreats.
Well, I don't have anything specifically that I would like to see, but I do concur with Nicole that it's great for new members to have additional support around it, because it can be it can look kind of like really out of sorts, but until you actually get involved in it and have individuals kind of helping you along the path, it gets a lot easier. And I'm definitely available to help Crawford and Nicole and Lanita in the process of getting things together. I might have some downtime to assist in that process as well.
Okay. Your name is added to the list, Ozzy. Okay, we'll get it done. Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments? And how do we want to, oh, wait a minute, Scott, yes, sir.
Well, Lanita's hand
Yeah.
was up first, so Lanita, why don't you go ahead of me?
Okay. So I was gonna actually say, I had just got elected to the CAB when you guys had the first retreat last year. And I was very lost. I tried to keep up as much as I possibly could, but what I didn't see was, and maybe it was there and I just didn't know what it was, but a presentation from each committee around what it did and how it tied into being a CAB board member. And so that would be really nice to see. Now, here going into my second year in March, I think that I understand what each committee does, but for me back then, looking hindsight, I would have liked to have seen that. So it may be if we can add something like that.
Thank you for the input. Scott.
Well, two things. I didn't get to go to the orientation because I was selected just after it had occurred. I feel that probably made things a little more challenging, a little more difficult for me to kind of get a grasp of stuff. And can I assume that this is going to be a Zoom thing from what I heard? It's not in person?
Yes, it more or less it will be. We haven't done the planning around doing this in person, where we could also establish sort of a hybrid opportunity where folks who can't make it in person could also join by Zoom. We just don't have the technology to do that here at the probation department, where in the past CAB meetings have taken place. So I think it looks like we might be leaning more toward it being virtual. And if it's helpful for folks to, as I mentioned, we could repost the PowerPoint and the agendas from what was done earlier this year. So for those of you who didn't go through it, you can kind of get a sense of what was shared and the sort of the flow of the day. That was also done virtually.
Got it. Thank you for that. So see, that's helpful because I was planning on this in-person thing in my mind, and it's going to be virtual. So that's cool. The other thing that I would recommend is that in middle of summer, we maybe have a mid-year, an abridged version for folks that come on kind of like I did and Lanita and others. that could maybe fill in some of the blanks, because I always feel like I'm kind of straining Monique and Patrice. I haven't bothered you so much, but I have Monique, and I think she's ready to throw me off the island. You know what I mean? So a mid-year. That's it for me.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none. Monique and Patrice, we're well over our time. How do we want to handle these reports, etc.? I know we're infringing potentially on individuals' times. How do we?
I can do a quick on the Board of Supervisors, since it's not in writing. I think the rest of the reports are in writing. It's up to you though.
Go for it, Jill.
Okay, so the Board of Supervisors approved the Measure X Innovation Fund framework. There's a press release that's gone out. There's grant funds that are available to a whole variety of different programmatic ideas, but basically innovation, new ideas that focus in the areas of equity and all sorts of areas. So lots of exciting news there. They accepted a report from the core committee on the suggestions for the Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice, and the board approved the formation of that office. So we're super excited, and included in that staffing is a data analyst, which is what we all have been desperately looking for, those of us who are trying to gather, collect, and analyze data to deal with the issues that are within our criminal justice system and throughout our county. They also approved the closure of the Orrin Allen Youth Rehabilitation Facility, also known as the Byron Boys Ranch, which is an arm of the juvenile justice system. And they have approved the fully opening of the community track, which is where those children who would normally go to the ranch will be remain in community with RAPT services 7 days a week. So that's super exciting. And the major question is, what if they have a home environment that they can't go back to? That's being addressed as well. November is Homelessness Awareness Month. And there's a whole toolkit available on all the different things. Many of the cities are also submitting proclamations and recognizing it. It's a pretty exciting time to really put a highlight on what we know is going on in our county. They also received yesterday a report and recommendations on the MX funds that are received in excess of what was originally planned. So they had that report yesterday, and they made some decisions along those lines, mainly providing COLAs for current programs, cost of living increases. And then they have continued teleconference meetings, and yesterday was the big Veterans Day celebration honoring our vets in our county. So that concludes the report. And then I can just tell you really quick, Patrice might be able to do it too, but the Racial Justice Oversight Body had a whole big applicant pool. And so the PPC selected members for that body going forward. And there was a question on a couple of the seats, and they also asked for a couple of alternates to be added to that body that I know Patrice is working on. And so they'll revisit it to discuss one more person who late to the party said that they wanted to continue. So, but other than that, there's a great pool of applicants that were selected for the Racial Justice Oversight Body. So and that concludes the report for both of those meetings, unless Patrice has something else to add that I missed.
Nope, you got it.
Thank you. What a tag team. Okay, let's move then. Scott, PPC.
PPC, I was unable to attend that meeting. I did look over the agenda, important items, but none of them that I could see directly related to CAB. So I don't know, Patrice, if you want to counter that with anything, because
so I gave that report. Yeah.
Okay.
That was the Racial Justice Oversight Body. Yeah, that was from PPC.
Okay, great then.
Oh, okay, and for OCEC, simple. We interviewed 4 people, and all 4 of them were accepted today through the vote of the CAB. So that is it. You can move on.
Great. Programs and services. Lila, a bullet or two.
Yeah, it's in writing there for us to look at, and I am sorry, I thought we were going to skip the ones in writing. So we had a very robust discussion where we talked about wanting to ask for money because of additional monies and strategies about how to do it. And that information was then taken to the policy and budget subcommittee. I don't know if Terry would like to add anything to that, since he did chair that meeting, and I'm so grateful for that, Terry.
No, that and what we talked about today covers it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lila and Terry. Nicole.
Well, mine will be really quick because Patrice did a great job on recapping the budget recommendations. But we had an awesome, amazing call discussing information, feedback from program and services, and reviewing the budget and recommendations. So we did get a public comment from Jill regarding BOSS. Again, we talked about the budget proposal and recommendations, which was covered really well during this call. So it was the key topics that Patrice covered. And then we discussed some end of year highlights, but majority of our call was around the budget proposal and recommendations. And I believe that's it.
If I could just jump in really quick here,
Oh,
just
yes,
because
you can.
I need a correction on that. So, it just
Where'd it
went.
go?
Okay. Under announcements, where it said that BOS approved the community report for the Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice, that word should be accepted, the report. And it's if you watch the meeting, it's kind of significant. So if that could just be changed to Jill, BOS accepted the community report. And that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Scott, your hand is up. Jill, your hand is still up, but hey, the floor is open for you. For both.
I dumped my hand.
Okay, good. All right, then. What does that take us to? The ambassador meetings. Do you want to put that off, Monique? And we can cover the ambassador meetings because we know they're ongoing and everybody's trying to get those meetings set up, accomplished. I know that there have been 3 of them, possibly 4 that have already been conducted. So why don't we just keep rocking and rolling? And where does that leave us? Next steps, Monique?
Yes, and I guess we can discuss that offline.
Yes, we can. All right. And that takes us to the conclusion here. First of all, before we conclude, we had other people that joined us today that are above and beyond our board. Tiffany, Michael, Alyssa, Jill, Motley, I think it's Ocean or Motley, Charles Brown, etc. Hey, we thank all of those people for attending. And maybe to cut everything short, let's adjourn to our next meeting, which will be December the 8th. And we will promise it won't be this long. Apologize again for going so long. This is kind of out of the pale. We'll do a better job of listing agenda items so we don't go beyond 12. Thank you very much. And thank everybody for their input. Most appreciated. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Crawford. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.